This meeting is being recorded.
I hit record too. So just when I ask you the questions, try not to speak over me. Try to wait after I ask the question to answer. If you could please repeat the question and your answer. So when I ask what your name is, if you could say my name is instead of just your name, just to give context, because we will be cutting short clips from here that we'll be giving to the editor. And yeah, we're ready to go. So could you please slate your name?
My name is Carmelia Ray.
And Carmelia, how old are you?
Oh, woman never tells her age, but since you're asking, I'm 48.
And where do you live?
I currently live in Toronto, Canada.
And what is your occupation?
I am a professional matchmaker, a relationship expert, and TV personality.
And why did you decide to get into matchmaking?
You know, I never decided to get into matchmaking. In 1992, I applied for a part-time job at a dating agency because it was unique. My ex-boyfriend said, "This is the perfect job for you." Turns out it was, and I never looked back.
Just getting my headphones, sorry. It's okay, we're cutting this, so it's all good. Just to help the sound. That's awesome. And what is it that you like about matchmaking?
Oh my God, I love putting people together. I really love working with even challenging clients. There isn't a better or more rewarding job than helping people, find a life partner. And in doing so, really getting, helping people transform their love life, whatever that looks like, particularly when they go from hopelessness to being hopeful and inspired and finally, really finding love.
What was the most challenging client that you've had?
Oh my goodness. I find the most challenging client, there's a lot. I think one of the most challenging clients is one I'm working with right now, actually. He's a 72-year-old executive who really likes younger women. And so he has, in my opinion, slightly unrealistic expectations in terms of a life partner, given that, he wants somebody that, in my opinion, is a little bit outside of his reach.
And how do you handle a situation like that?
I tell him as it is. I share my perspective. I let him know that because of his strict parameters, that is limiting his opportunity to meeting perfectly viable and perfectly compatible women as a result of his very, very particular preference to a certain look of a human being. So I just really let him know what I'm dealing with and what he can expect as a result, how his preferences are limiting his opportunities to finding love.
And what do you think is your favorite part about matchmaking?
My favorite part about matchmaking is our makeovers. Before I work with somebody, I have them work with my stylist. We do a wardrobe consultation and I do the photo shoot. So really, when I take somebody through that branding sort of transformation, that is my favorite part. I love the photography aspect. I love catching people in their natural light. I particularly love working with those who think they're not photogenic. So watching somebody just appreciate who they are, oftentimes they're so clouded and they're dealing with their false perceptions of their limitations, and I see beyond that. So that's what I really enjoy the most.
And for matchmakers that are struggling to do a good job, what do you think they're missing?
Can you repeat the question?
So with matchmakers that are struggling to do the job properly, what do you think is missing from what they're doing, or what kind of advice would you have for them?
I think for matchmakers who are struggling with what they're doing, they are taking on clients that they shouldn't be taking on. So in other words, perhaps the motivation is the finance and not necessarily, I've had matchmakers collaborate with me and they've taken on a new client, and I can clearly tell that this person would be challenging or that they've overpromised and underdelivered. So the biggest challenge for most matchmakers that I see is taking on a client that they know they're going to struggle with and not being transparent about that. If I take on a client that I know is difficult to work with, I will let them know where I feel their limitations and give them a realistic expectation of the time frame. I just spoke with somebody today who hired me, and I shared with her, she's a 55-year-old woman. She's very open. So the fact that she's ethnically open, she's open on height, she's very realistic. She's somebody I can work with. If I was working with a woman that had high expectations, very rigid on those parameters, and I took this person on without letting them know where I'm going to struggle, that would be getting myself into trouble.
Is there a certain demographic that's harder to set up than others?
Historically and by data, Black women and Asian men are have the most difficult time on an online dating site. And when it comes to, dating, I do find that there is a lot of racial biases and cultural preferences that are very limiting. The other demographic that's difficult are those who are overweight, those who are shorter or super tall. I've got women that are 6 feet tall, or I had one client who came to me. I didn't work with him, I coached him. He's 5'1", and he's having a really hard time because of his height. So those are some challenges when it comes to dating. When someone does not fit the ideal tall, dark, and handsome, or they may not be physically attractive according to the norm.
And what do you think matchmakers could learn from you?
Oh my goodness. Well, I just launched a matchmaking academy, so I think they can learn the business of matchmaking, the process of matchmaking, the sales aspect of matchmaking. I think a lot of matchmakers have a hard time pricing themselves appropriately and really explaining to somebody the true service that they're giving. If somebody is able to see the investment and the value of what you're doing by helping introduce them to a life partner and not just a date for Friday night, I think there wouldn't be anybody that would have an issue making that investment. A lot of times when people say, "Oh, you charge thousands of dollars to find a date?" Forget it, I can go on Tinder. They've got the wrong context of what matchmaking truly is. We are just as important a service as it would be to use a realtor, someone preparing your, I don't even know if you want to call it taxes or nutritionist or your medical doctor. We are the love doctor. And really, Sheryl Sandberg said it best. The most important career decision you make is the person you marry. A bad relationship is going to impact all aspects of your life. A great relationship is going to elevate all aspects of your life.
How do you feel like the pandemic has changed dating?
Well, this is the new norm for dating. The pandemic has changed dating in that, we are now moving to visual platforms. There is less connection, and people are forced to communicate. I recently did a survey through Christian Dating for Free. We probably had about 1,700 survey responses. And what's interesting is that singles have reported that they're more optimistic about dating and that communication has improved. And yet in this particular survey, 60% of singles have not dated at all. Like they haven't gone on a physical date. So where it becomes challenging is figuring out what to do when you cannot go to a bar or restaurant. So it's forcing people to be really creative when it comes to figuring things out.
How many matches would you say that you've roughly set up?
Oh my goodness, thousands. I can't count the number of matches. I worked for a dating agency for 17 years of my career, and I was at the head of the matchmaking department. So I can't say that I personally facilitated all those matches, but I definitely had a hand in putting couples together.
Why do you think you're qualified to judge other matchmakers?
I've hired and trained matchmakers my entire career. I'm qualified because I've done it for a living. I was the person that would fly into a company when the company was not doing well. So I taught people how to how to sell, how to close, how to deliver a better service, implementing processes. And I'm not single now, but I've been divorced, I've been married, I have 3 kids, I'm a mompreneur, I've done it all, I've had my heart broken, I've broken hearts. So it's really through life experience that I'm qualified to teach other matchmakers. And I do it for a living.
Sorry, just something popped up here. I hope that that was perfect. And then, how do you know Paul?
Oh my goodness. Paul and I go way back. The story of Paul in 2008, I think that was the year, Paul was just thinking about becoming a matchmaker. You can ask him, and he shares this story. I was the matchmaker, the only one in the room that approached him and said, "What are you doing here? Why do you want to become a matchmaker?" And it was my interaction with him and welcoming him into the community and really asking him what he wanted. Like, he was the only black man. He was the only man, and he was the only black man in the entire room before he became a matchmaker. And from there, we developed a friendship. I've been part of Paul's community for a long time. He's run masterminds. I went to Barbados with him and his family. So Paul and I go way back.
Do you ever set your dates up with people in different cities or different countries?
All the time. I just did a match with somebody from New York to Toronto. I've done a cross-border match with someone from California to Vancouver. I do a lot of cross-border matching. I'm an international matchmaker.
Amazing. I think that's great. I think we got everything. If you could hit end on your record, and then I'll hit end.